There's very little. Good afternoon to all of you here who are present. We have today a very lovely series of sessions. First with Dr. Rajinder Singh, who is, well, I must first say that he is a distinguished lecturer of ASHRAE, the American Society for Heating, which is headquartered in the United States. He's a PhD in refrigeration from Delhi, and he's a professor at the Pusa Institute. Now, I won't say more about him. You'll see profiles of each of these speakers popping up on the chat box. Please read them. And if you have questions or thoughts that come to your mind that you want to share with the speakers as they roll along with their thoughts, please put them up in the Q&A box, not in the chat box. Please put it in the Q&A box so that I will personally track it, give those questions or thoughts to each of these speakers through this session of about 60 minutes that we're going to have. Welcome once again to this World Green Building Week and the Prem Jain Memorial Trust, in collaboration, of course, with the Indian Green Building Council, ISHRAE, ASHRAE, and all its leaders in India have been celebrating this now since the demise of Dr. Prem Jain in 2018. And it's amazing and uncanny that he died on the 20th of September. And every year, 20th of September happens to be the start of the World Green Building Week, which is celebrated across 70 countries plus. It seems to somehow, in a way, it tells me, it seems to be like Dr. Jain left his body, but gave his life and spirit to this blessed event called the World Green Building Week. And the Prem Jain Memorial Trust has been doing this consistently every year. And we have 5 sessions to go this week. We are at the 3rd session. This week-long festival began on Monday. Today, we had something on Monday on sustainability, design, and trends of the future. And then we had something on traditional technologies yesterday and the history around and heritage around such buildings and styles of architecture. Today, it's about the digital age and efficiency that is before us this decade and beyond this decade. And you will have Dr. Drew Crawley and Dr. Rajinder Singh speak about this in their own ways. Tomorrow will be the 4th day, and that will bring something on building resilience at the macro levels, both levels, at the microcosm and the macrocosm. How does it impact you when it comes to building resilience for a building or for the built environment itself? Friday will be the last in the series, and that will be on how we simplify sustainability for users and consumers. Today, we also have the president of the Indian Plumbing Association and the vice chairperson of the Indian Green Building Council, a veteran speaker, a veteran everything, and a dear friend, Gurmeet Singh Arora, with us, and he will be speaking just after Dr. Rajinder Singh. I will stop here and go to. Can I request you, Dr. Rajinder Singh, to take the mic now and to spend some time telling these youngsters, architects, professional architects, working professionals of various kinds who are here on whatever you want to share with them on today's theme. Dr. Singh. Yes. There. Singh, can you unmute, please? And maybe we can have your video also turned on. Yatin, help us to see that.
Rajinder ji, please. Can you hear us?
Yeah. We're losing him somewhere, or is he there?
Yeah, Rajinder ji.
Yes.
Please, sir.
So your time starts. You can take the mic now, and if you have a presentation, you can share or you can speak. I'll leave it to you, Dr. Rajinder Singh.
Good afternoon to the senior members, ASHRAE DL. Good morning. Our student members, they are joining this seminar. Now, this Green Building Week, that is very useful for the students. And this day, the topic is Going Digital Modeling Infrastructure Resilience for Sustainable Urban Development. So that is very, very useful for the young students. They are coming to the industry. Now, this is only due to the Dr. Prem Jain. He was a founder of IGBC. He was also founder of the ASHRAE India chapter and ISHRAE. So he was a Bhisham Pitama of our RSC industry in India. And I hope by today's lecture, the students of our college and other students, they will be benefited, and hope this will be a very good session. And in case of any query question, you can write in the box, and after the session, you will get the answers. So thank you to all of you for joining the seminar.
Very short. Is that it, Dr. Singh, or do you have some more to say?
Yeah.
Is that it? Wonderful.
This time useful. We will spend more time to the lecture.
Lovely. Absolutely lovely. Can I then, without much further ado, get to, no, I need to get Gurmeet Singh Arora to speak. A brief chat to inspire, to motivate all of you here on a phenomenal set of things. He calls it Jal Hai To Kal Hai. Gurmeet Singh.
Can I take over?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Well, I am going to speak to you. Am I audible, Dr. Hariharan?
Yes, please. Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. I am going to speak to you in Hindi. And I am going to speak to you about a very big crisis in our country on water. Ladies and gentlemen, भाइयों और बहनों, मेरा नाम जल है. मुझे अलग अलग प्रकार, अलग अलग जबानों में प्यार से पानी, वोडा, बचाओ, माई, देशो, एक्वा, वंद, सीयू चाइना में, टू बीक, वासर जर्मनी में, आयर और माँ के नाम से भी पुकारते हैं. माँ, मुझे माँ भी बुलाते हैं. भारत में आप मुझे प्यार से थानेर, वेलम, नीरू और जलम के नाम से पुकारते हैं. मेरे बिना आप जी नहीं सकते, क्योंकि हर चीज में मैं आपको बताने वाला हूं अगले 10 मिनट में कि हर चीज में पानी के बिना आप कुछ नहीं कर सकते, कुछ बना नहीं सकते, कुछ उगा नहीं सकते, कुछ खा नहीं सकते. आपके बदन के अंदर 70% मैं हूं, पानी हूं, जल हूं. हर प्रकार अलग अलग स्थानों में मैं पाया जाता हूं. हिमालय की चोटियों में, युंगफ्राउ की चोटियों में, स्विट्जरलैंड में, नदियों में, महाबलेश्वर की वीना लेक, भोपाल की अनगिनत 15-16 लेकों में. जो आप बर्फ अपनी कोका कोला या विस्की में डालते हो, वो भी मैं. आकाश के बादलों में, बारिश में या समुंदर में, वो मैं हूं. मैं जल हूं. मैं कल भी था और कल भी रहूंगा. याद रहे, मैं कल भी था और कल भी रहूंगा. आप आओगे, आप चले जाओगे, लेकिन मैं जल हूं, मैं कल भी हूं. मेरा इस्तेमाल बहुत अलग अलग स्थानों में और चीजों में किया जाता है. 65 से 70% पानी चाहिए आपको आपका खाना उगाने के लिए. और आपके पास एक बहुत ऊंचाई नीचाई की चीज है आपके देश में. 17% दुनिया की आबादी आपके देश में है, लेकिन सिर्फ 4% साफ पानी, फ्रेश वाटर जो कहते हैं. 17% आबादी जो उग रही है, बढ़ रही है, और 4% पानी जो आप खराब करते जा रहे हैं, कम होते जा रहा है. आपकी देश में एक आईटी कैपिटल है दुनिया की, बेंगलुरु. उसमें आपको 1200 मीटर, 5000 फुट नीचे जाना पड़ता है पानी को, फॉसिल वाटर जो कहते हैं, पानी के वाटर टेबल को टच करने के लिए. 1200 मीटर. आपके साउथ इंडिया में एक चेन्नई है जहाँ इडली डोसा भी मिलता है. वहां हर चीज चावल से ही बनती है, और चावल पानी बहुत लेता है. एक सरदार साहब है यहाँ हमारे वेबिनार में, जो नॉर्थ इंडिया से है, जो रोटी खाते हैं, चावल कम खाते हैं, और गेहूं में पानी कम लगता है, जो मैं आपको समझाने वाला हूं. चेन्नई में 800 मीटर, 600 से 800 मीटर, 2400 फुट मुझे नीचे जाना, किसी को नीचे जाना पड़ता है जल को टच करने के लिए, पानी के वाटर टेबल को टच करने के लिए. और ये नहीं पता आपको कि वो पानी अच्छा होगा या वो पानी में बीमारी हो, ये भी नहीं पता आपको। 1 किलो चावल उगाने के लिए 3000 लीटर पानी लगता है। इसको कहते हैं वर्चुअल वाटर, इम्बेडेड वाटर, इम्बॉडीड वाटर। ये जो टी शर्ट ये बंदे ने पहनी है, इसमें 1500 लीटर पानी जाता है। 1500 लीटर, 1500 बोतल पानी। ये मेरा OnePlus 6T फोन में 2500 लीटर पानी है। 2500 लीटर। मैं बार बार ये कह रहा हूं,
Like we lost Gurmeet there. Gurmeet, are you going to reconnect? Can you hear us? Gurmeet, okay. May I suggest chance, Dr. Crowley, can I take a chance and say that we will invite Gurmeet to come back a little later instead of wasting people's time, and have you, to take the session from here on and up. There he is.
I got disconnected, Chandra.
Please start then.
Can I carry on?
Yeah, I think you should finish if you can. Yeah. I hope your network holds. Yeah.
I don't know, I'm in the factory, I've got a landline, but anyway. गब्बर सिंह कह रहा था 50-50 मील दूर माँ कहती है बेटे को दूध पी ले, नहीं तो गब्बर सिंह आ जाएगा। वो 1 गिलास दूध में 1000 लीटर पानी चाहिए, 1 गिलास दूध बनाने के लिए। 1000 लीटर 1 ग्लास ऑफ मिल्क। तो ऐसी कोई चीज नहीं है जिसमें पानी नहीं वापर बिना पानी का आप कोई भी चीज नहीं बना सकते, कोई फैक्ट्री नहीं चल सकती, कोई आपका घर नहीं चल सकता। आपके देश में एक कानून है, और मैं एक बहुत स्ट्रॉन्ग लफ्ज यूज करने वाला हूं। लड़की को ऐसे करते हो, बोलती है बलात्कार हो। कोर्ट चले जाती है, बोलती है बलात्कार हो गया मेरा। आप क्या कर रहे हैं मेरा? आप क्या मेरा बलात्कार नहीं कर रहे? आपकी जो कैपिटल है नई दिल्ली, उसमें जो सूरज ट्रीटमेंट प्लांट है सिर्फ 55% चल रहे हैं, 45% चलते ही नहीं है। तो आप क्या करते हो? गंदा पानी नदी में डाल देते हो, यमुना में। यमुना भी काली हो जाती है। और मुंबई में समुद्र में पानी डाल देते हो, प्लास्टिक डाल देते हो। हर स्क्वायर किलोमीटर में मेरे समुद्र में, अरेबियन सी, इंडियन ओशन में, बे ऑफ बंगाल में 1 लाख पीस माइक्रोप्लास्टिक। कोई ऐसा सी टर्टल नहीं है दुनिया में जिसके अंदर प्लास्टिक नहीं है। और जो आप मछली खाते हो, जो भी नॉन वेजिटेरियन है, वो आप कैंसर खा रहे हो। अपने आप के लिए आप कैंसर पैदा कर रहे हो। इतने रोग आपने पैदा कर दिए हैं पिछले 10 साल में। जब ये जो प्रेजेंटर, जब ये स्कूल में थे, इन्होंने सुनामी का नाम नहीं सुना था, इन्होंने फॉरेस्ट फायर का नाम नहीं सुना था, इन्होंने हीट आइलैंड इफेक्ट का नाम नहीं सुना था। ये सब आपके माता पिता और उनके माता पिता के कारण है। और हम ये नहीं कह सकते कि ये अमेरिका ने किया, ये यूरोप ने किया। ये जिम्मेदारी आपकी है, ये सिर्फ आपकी है। और अगर आप पानी को नहीं बचाओगे तो जल नहीं होगा तो कल नहीं होगा। लिख के ले लीजिए मेरे से ही यार। मैं बार बार कह रहा हूं, मैं आपके बिना जी सकता हूं, आप मेरे बिना जी नहीं सकते। ये जो पायल जैन जी है, इनके पिताजी बनारस में पढ़े हुए हैं। मुझे कहते थे बेटा, जब मैं बनारस जाता था तो गंगा माँ का पानी 1 लीटर मैं घर लेके आता था, अमृत जैसे पीने के लिए। अभी आप जाके पीजिए गंगा का पानी, बीमारी नहीं होगी तो क्या होगी आपको? आपका एक है कुल्लू मनाली नॉर्थ में, यहाँ पर वाइट वाटर रिवर राफ्टिंग करते हैं। वहां पर एक हिमालय का पानी का बॉटलिंग प्लांट है। बिना ट्रीटमेंट का वो पानी बोतल में डाल के 100 रुपए की बोतल बेचते हैं, मिनरल वाटर उसको कहते हैं। और जब तक वो नदी इंसान के पास आती है, इंसान उसका सत्यानाश करता है। आपको किसने कहा कि आप मोहम्मद रफी हो या लता मंगेशकर हो कि आप जब शावर के नीचे जाते हो गाना चालू कर देते हो? अजीब अजीब है आप ये इंसान। आपको गाना है, बाहर आइए, सोफे पे खड़े रहिए, बिस्तर पे खड़े रहिए और गाइए जितना गाना है, जितना चिल्लाना है चिल्लाइए। शावर के नीचे क्यों गाते हो? आपको किसने कहा कि जो आपका WC है, जो आपका फ्लश है, पॉटी है, वो एक एस्ट्रे है या कचरे का डब्बा है कि उसमें कचरा फेंको और फ्लश कर दो? आपको किसने कहा कि साबुन से हाथ धो रहे हो, शेव कर रहे हो, ब्रश कर रहे हो, नल चलने दो? मैंने देखा है, मेरे दोस्त के वहां एक गुरमीत सिंह मेरा एक है दोस्त उधर, उसके घर में एक बर्तन वाली भाई आती है, बहुत सुंदर है, इतनी सुंदर है कि वो जब वो साबुन लगा रही है सब वो बर्तन को और पीछे फ्लर्ट कर रही है दूसरों के साथ और 200 लीटर पानी चले जाता है। और उसके घर में सिर्फ 130 लीटर पानी दिया जाता है एक आदमी के लिए उनके म्युनिसिपल कॉर्पोरेशन से। तो क्या करते हैं? टैंकर का पानी खरीदते हैं। और टैंकर के पानी से क्या होता है? डिजीज, बीमारी। हम बोलते हैं हम बीमार हो गए। आजकल आप अपने दादा को पूछिए, इतनी दवाइयां तो कोई खाता ही नहीं था। आजकल हर चीज की दवाई, सर दर्द हो रहा है सेरेडॉन ले लो, बुखार हो रहा है क्रोसिन ले लो। आपके कोविड-19 के कारण आपको हैंड वॉशिंग, हाइजीन, डिसइंफेक्शन पानी के बिना, ये भी पानी के बिना नहीं बन सकता। इसमें भी आपको पानी चाहिए। तो आप पानी को अपमान क्यों करते हो? एक फ्रेंच एस्ट्रोफिजिस्ट है, वो कहता है इंसान इतना मूर्ख है, सबसे मूर्ख जो जात है वो इंसान है, कि वो एक भगवान या अल्लाह को पूछता है जिसको उसने आज तक नहीं देखा, इनविजिबल है, और वो एक नेचर को डिस्ट्रॉय करता है जो उसके सामने है। उसको ये नहीं पता कि जो भगवान को पूज रहा है वही उसका नेचर है, वही उसकी जल, वायु, अग्नि, आकाश और धरती है। जल, वायु, आकाश और धरती को नहीं संभालोगे आपके लिए दुनिया नहीं बचेगी। हमको पानी को रिस्पेक्ट देना है, आदर देना है। सिंगापुर में 40% पानी आपके बाथरूम के पानी से आता है, आपके किचन के गंदे पानी से आता है, आपके फ्लश के पानी से आता है, और वो बोतल में डाल के उसको न्यू वाटर बोलते हैं। 5 प्लांट है, उसको न्यू वाटर बोलते हैं। 40% पानी ट्रीट होके, डिसइंफेक्ट होके, मेम्ब्रेन टेक्नोलॉजी के थ्रू आपको बोतल में दिया जाता है और आपको पीते हो। मैंने देखा है ये जो भारत के,
sorry, one more minute.
2 minutes प्लीज।
Okay.
ये जो भारत में है, मैंने देखा है सिंगापुर जाते हैं, एक चीज बाहर नहीं फेंकते, या एयरपोर्ट पे पहुंचते हैं बाहर फेंकने चालू कर देते हैं कचरा पूरा। 70% संक्रमण रोग, कम्युनिकेबल डिजीज गंदे पानी से संचालित होती है। रोज 3000 बच्चे डायरिया से मरते हैं। कोविड-19 से भी ये खतरनाक है। इसीलिए मैं अपनी स्पीच बंद करता हूं क्योंकि चेयरमैन साहब ने बोल दिया 1 मिनट और। मगर आपके जो सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट गोल है, 17 में से 6 पानी से मतलब रखते हैं। गुड हेल्थ एंड वेलबींग, क्लीन वाटर एंड सैनिटेशन, सस्टेनेबल सिटीज एंड कम्युनिटी पानी के बिना नहीं हो सकता। क्लाइमेट एक्शन, लाइफ बिलो वाटर, लाइफ ऑन लैंड पानी के बिना नहीं हो सकता। तो मैं आपसे दरख्वास्त करूंगा लेडीज एंड जेंटलमैन, भाइयों बहनों, जल बचाओ, कल बचाओ। जल है तो कल है, जल नहीं तो कल नहीं। नमस्कार, थैंक यू।
Jal nahi to kal hai. Okay, so we move to Dr. Trolley. He is the key speaker for the day, and he will, I'm sure, educate us. Very distinguished man in his own ways. I'll put it like this to you: he is somebody who is published more than 120 papers, testified before the US Congress, he says, and that's impressive. Lectured at more than 40 universities across the world and in the United States. Made more than 400 presentations on building energy efficiency, sustainability, renewable energy across the world. So there we are, Dr. Drury B. Crawley, fellow Ashray and a director at large at the American Society. Over to you, Dr. Crawley.
Good evening, and thank you for the invitation to talk today. Always love being able to talk to colleagues in India, and I'm able to share a bit at the end about a project that we're working on in Ahmedabad, so we'll go there. My topic today is going digital, and specifically looking at digital modeling, digital twins to be able to deal with infrastructure resilience. And so I'm going to go through a number of examples in different sectors to talk about how, excuse me, how things are being, how digital technology is being used today. There we go. I always like to start my talks with kind of context for buildings and why we even care whether they're efficient. Worldwide, buildings account for about 30% of energy use and even more of carbon emissions. If you go to about the 5th bar, you'll see India is about 25% for buildings. That's been growing quite quickly, and worldwide building energy use is going up as our economies transition from primarily industrial to more service oriented. And it ranges quite a bit. If we, for example, look at China, the 3rd bar, and Hong Kong, the 4th bar, China buildings account for about 20% of energy use today, but even a decade, 15 years ago, it was 10%. So they doubled the energy use of buildings in China in that period. In Hong Kong, it's kind of the opposite sort of scenario where buildings account for 65% of energy use, with transportation a next largest percentage and just a small amount for our industrial. So it varies depending on what the economy is based on. In India, of course, 60% is still in industry, and but we're seeing a huge transition as new buildings are built, as there's a need for new residences and commercial buildings. I'm going to give you an example just showing the US situation. The numbers will be different in India, but there'll be kind of similar ideas. Within our building sector in the US, 40% of our energy use is for buildings. That's been growing. We thought with the pandemic that we would see a downturn. That changed pretty rapidly. We're already back above energy use where we were a year and a half ago after the start of the pandemic and the shutdown that happened. Roughly spread between housing and commercial buildings. Residential has been growing a bit more than commercial, as can be expected to some extent, particularly as many people stayed home this past year. I show this not to be specific to the US, but to remind people that our buildings are getting more and more complex, even our homes. It's no longer just cooking, cooling, and a bit of electricity for lighting. We've got many things going on here. Now, US, we have a large proportion for our housing is for heating, but water heating, cooling. And then we start to get down television, computers, lots of different uses. But I think one of the things that's changed everywhere is the other uses. These are the small devices that we see in our houses, the internet connections, other things that are come into the house over the last few decades that are changing how energy is used. So it's now beginning to dominate and be more important than anything else. In the commercial sector, there's no one typical commercial building. If it's a supermarket, half the energy may be for that refrigeration and freezing equipment to keep our food safe, but it varies quite a bit. But heating, refrigeration, cooling, lighting, etc. But still, if you go to the bottom, a full third of the energy use now is in small devices, small things that are not accounted for up above. So it's important, if we're going to deal with either our homes or our businesses, we look at the entirety of energy use. We can't just focus on the big energy uses anymore. So this is an example of a digital twin. This is Paris, and this was captured using a small airplane to capture a large part of the city, but it was also merged with ground-based capture so that you can see what's going on, and it is a true 3D model. I could go in and measure dimensions off of various pieces that you see there. This idea of 3D modeling, it's not a single device, it's not a single platform, it's not a single piece of software. You can capture by drone, by phone, even your mobile phone you can do today. It includes LiDAR and other devices that are very specific to that. So we can capture a lot of detail in many ways and put them together. So that idea has become what's being called the digital twin. Excuse me. Here's an example of using a mobile phone app to take multiple pictures. They're then sent to a model or to the server to be able to do that. And within a few minutes, for a simple project like this, you can capture the essence of what you're taking a picture of and be able to have it on your device and to be able to use that. So show you some early efforts. This was some work done a few years ago for security purposes. This is the city of Philadelphia. They wanted to be able to capture site views and distances, and also to be able to apply security fencing to a model. So what they did was fly the city with a helicopter to get tens of thousands of pictures, which were then converted into this model. But at the same time, they were able to, in a BIM platform, have this model add the security fencing and other devices so that they could see how that would work within the context. So the model is all very interesting, but it doesn't really give us anything more than a 3D model. Within the US, more than 25 cities now are requiring by law that building owners over about 5,000 square meters have present their utility bills, their water, their electricity, their natural gas, other fuels, to a public database that can be queried. And for Philadelphia, it is one of those cities. They have that data sitting there. It's large commercial buildings again, but it has specific information: the floor area of the building, its building type, other data associated with that information. At the same time, they will give energy use specific to electricity, water, fuel oil, and even a measure of energy efficiency, the Energy Star score. So there's a lot of data associated with that. But the data looks like this. There's some sort of ID, there's a postal code, what the property address is, and greenhouse gases, et cetera, even to building type and specific uses. It's not particularly useful. They do provide a mapping of that, but our thought in looking at this, the center of Philadelphia that we were just looking at is this denser part right here. But we thought, why not, right here, why not use that model that we already have of the city and begin to explore the data within that model, so that we can embed the data within the model. It's no longer just a 3D model, but it now has data associated with that. So I can look at a specific property. I can sort by different energy intensities, find the most energy intensive for that location. In this case, not surprising, it is a hospital. And begin to look at some of the other data associated with that. So now we begin to have a model that has data associated with it that we can do analysis. We can begin to look at opportunities for improving individual buildings, but also the whole sector. So that gets us to the idea of a digital twin, taking detail beyond where we are with just a static model of the city or even data associated with it, but begin to take it to a model of a particular building and associate that with data, not only static data such as energy bills, but moving on to monitor data. Sorry, allergies here. This is a project at the University of Cambridge in the UK. This is part of their research campus in West Cambridge, the Institute for Manufacturing. And what has been created here is a digital twin using photogrammetry for the exterior. That's the collection of photographs that are being brought together, but then they use LiDAR to do the plant room specifically. So we can go into the building, we can look at it in detail. We could measure what the windows are, what the various parts are. But in this case, we're going to go into the plant room and be able to look at what is physically in the plant today and see all the equipment and the systems, and even to be able to query some of them to see what the operating conditions are at this particular time. And it's that being able to have the data together, which is very is going to be very powerful. Is becoming. This was a research project starting there, but you can see some of the pumps and being able to pull that information there. So we can have that. We know what the plant room conditions are, what its specific case is. We can look at its operating performance over time. So begins to become a more powerful, true model, a digital twin of the building, be able to operate and look at any cases and see what the conditions are at any point. Similarly, in transportation, we're beginning to see that same sort of idea to have a digital twin of the city to be able to look at transportation objects. In this case, they're looking to put a new motorway through the city and being able to look how access ramps and other things could be able to do, and at the same time allow you to simulate how traffic would look for those particular cases and how they would interact with the buildings around them. Lots of other things going on in the transportation sector as well. For water and storm infrastructure, we're seeing lots of other. This is an example of a handheld device being taken through city sewers in Paris, because they're old enough, they don't really have a measure device, but now we can very quickly begin to get a mapping of the system here. Similarly, this is an example where the ground was opened up to reveal the infrastructure. They had to do some repairs, but within a dozen pictures or so, they were able to capture the situation and have a model for that going forward. Other systems, there's augmented reality here, and I'll show you another example of that being applied, so that at the ground level, you begin to see what the subsurface things are going on. And I'll just go on to the next. So here's somebody using augmented reality, a lens system to be able to look at what's going on, and so she is seeing the added colors, the lines, etc. So now she can identify where things are without having to open the ground, and understand that underground in this case is probably a water system and its connection point for that various places. Similarly, we can move that on to looking at flooding and looking at resilience of a city for a particular case. This is the city of Paris again, near Notre Dame, Ile de la Cité, and showing what happens for certain levels of rise in the Seine, and what happens, where are they most prone to flooding, where are going to be the issues. Also can identify specifically if we raise the embankment by 20 centimeters, will that be enough? Or maybe we need to go 40 to be able to protect the city from flooding in various cases. So precise measurements are part of this that you can be able to add, begin to be able to do what if scenarios. Similarly, I had slides I didn't show, also looking at not just river flooding, but also potential catastrophic rainfall, and can the infrastructure, the sewer systems, the water systems support that, and showing flooding in historic areas that need to be dealt with. Another example of this is thermography. So instead of just using photographs and photogrammetry, using thermographs. A professor at Georgia Tech University in Atlanta has been working with this for a while, being able to collect information. He's trying to be able to quickly identify from thermographs which buildings have issues, and not only the specific buildings, but the idea of which windows have failed, where insulation has failed, where there are problems in large heat sinks. Excuse me. In this case, they flew a drone around the university campus, specific dorm buildings. You see the photographs. That's kind of the photogrammetry processes, knowing where the pictures were taken and what direction they were taken. And that's how the algorithms create that. So this is the model that it creates. And you can interact with the 3D model and begin to measure things. You can see temperature gradients across across the way, begin to see hotspots where windows are warmer than others. You see where insulation is not in place or has failed, so you can begin to do that. And they're doing using artificial intelligence now to begin to identify specific sizes in other aspects of this as well. Another area of interest is so-called agent-based simulation. And the idea is that we can simulate people and how they move throughout spaces. Here's an example in various, a train station. There was an airport there, but here's an example. Starting with a BIM model, we have the infrastructure there. We're looking at the impacts of only using 2 turnstiles, and you see we have a kind of a bottleneck there. Then live within that model, we can go back, add additional turnstiles from our directory that's already available, and then go back and re-simulate that same information again. And you can see that we've now, with the agent-based simulation, can see that we've eliminated the bottleneck before we built the project, and before we ran into an issue. We can begin to look at all those opportunities there. Similarly, we're getting into where traffic and modeling, where we can look at 4-dimensional aspects. This is a new development, Jurong, going on in Singapore, and where they're looking at the impacts of the additional traffic and where they're going to be having possible choke points. But to be able to look at that before there and look at ways to reduce some of those impacts is really important. One of the most comprehensive models of a city that I've seen so far, I showed you Philadelphia, it was kind of just the first attempt at that, has been the city of Helsinki in Finland. And this is their 2nd generation model that they have of the city. They've flown it several times. They recently completed a 3rd generation, which I'll just show you in a moment, but very detailed. This, I think, is at about 10 centimeter resolution, and they're dropping that even further. Right? And so this is the new model and their reality mesh. They're using it for planning. The part off to the right is a new development, but they're also looking to use machine learning to do automatic feature extraction to look at what is a roof, a facade, where is the streets, etc., and to be able to begin to learn from that without having to have human intervention is really important. The city has looked at how they can use that model. They've been very progressive about looking at it, but carbon neutral city, smart city, services, web, business, education, marketing, tourism, communication, planning, transportation, microclimate, permissions for construction, et cetera. Lots of different uses. And you see there, the green is what they've been beginning to look at. Blue, they've thought about. Red are opportunities that they've not be able to done that. So the city is very open with this. You can go to their website and find any of this data available online. They're very much into showing what's going on. So, you know, they're looking at a reality mesh, planning, design, a little bit on visualization, data integration, energy and emissions has become very important here, alternative energy opportunities, IoT as well. And I think that's going to be one of the things that we will see a lot of opportunity as 5G gets penetration with our mobile phone system. We're going to be able to get more real-time opportunity for feedback and control within our cities. And that's going to be a big change going forward. A similar project, but a little bit different case, is Ahmedabad. We've been working with CEPT University there, and Professor Rajan Rao has been kind enough to share some of these. This was a test case they did. This is about 1.2 square kilometer section along the river. They are working to capture the entire city of Ahmedabad. I think it's over 200 square kilometers they're looking to do. And not only that, they're looking to use that as a baseline to be able to create energy models of that information and apply on top of that other information related to it. So they have maps at this point of looking at the city for land use. This is showing where it's residential versus commercial and industrial, and applying information about operational energy, water consumption. They know what each of the buildings are doing. They know where the high uses are. So in this case, they've identified an apartment block that's 200,000 square meters, and it has relatively high water consumption, maybe not per person, but for a building, because there are so many people in there. Similarly, same sort of model that they're working with. They have an energy intensity. They can look at the energy use for each of the different types of buildings and begin to work on that as well. They can, like the previous look at that same apartment building, begin to look at its energy efficiency and see what the opportunities might be. They've created energy models of each of these buildings and attempted to calibrate back to the energy bills where they could, to begin to look at what the possible outcomes are. So cooling dominates in this building, followed by equipment and lighting, and then water pumping because of the high rise as well. At the same time, they're beginning to look at baseline scenarios, the bottom, and looking at where are the opportunities for being able to take this into compliance with the ECBC energy standard there in India, and where are the opportunities for that today. So what does the future look like? Well, instead of separate pieces where our buildings are really separate from our energy, from our water systems, our roads and storm, that we're going to have interconnectedness, that the digital twin will allow us to bring all the pieces together and have that developed in a way that we will be able to control and make use of that, and also create the resilience that we need from all our infrastructure systems. So that connected infrastructure is really the key piece here. So quick summary, these 3D digital models, the digital twins, really make it easier to understand our buildings. Without having to go to the field and doing detailed measurements, we can create a model of these buildings, understand their interactions with their community and the surrounding environment and infrastructure. We have and can do a federation of data, bringing data from disparate sources. They can be reality models, they could be BIM models, they could then be real-time data analytics applied to that. It's not tied to any one vendor. It's data or even a platform. There are a number of them out in the market, and you can have data drawn from many models and data sets. It's an important part to understand. This is not selling a particular platform for a solution here. There are lots of ways of going about this. A true digital twin, though, is not just a block model. A true digital twin includes enough detail that you could go and measure off the building what's going on in detail. You know what's going on inside. And it's not just a surface model that you might get from City GML or some of the other sets that have done extrusions from satellite photos. It provides a holistic way to really look at lots of challenges to our buildings, the risk associated maybe with flooding, resilience, what happens if the utility grid fails, and sustainability at individual level, at community, or even city scale across many disciplines. It's not the, excuse me, it's not just the individual building now, it's the whole community that we can look at and evaluate where are the opportunities and where we can make improvements for everybody's benefit. As I mentioned, with 5G coming soon, and I say soon, I mean 5G, we're beginning to see it here in Washington, D.C., but we're not seeing it in the way that it's envisioned. I think we're a few years off. For the ultra high speeds they're talking about, that's what's going to make smart cities possible. The interconnectedness of the Internet of Things, so that devices can talk through the internet, and through using 5G, we can interact with devices real time. We're starting to see some of that with traffic and being able to look at traffic control lights and being able to adjust those on a real-time basis if we have a situation or an accident that's causing a backup in a certain area. So it winds up beginning to be a powerful tool, not only for policymaking, but also for building owners and the community at large. And anything that is measured locally now within our buildings will probably be interconnected. The smart buildings are enabling the Internet of Things, and that is what enables our smart cities. Excuse me. Last, I just want to tell you about a free service. There are, if you're doing building performance simulation, you need weather data. And in this Climate.1 building group has created a set of about 100 weather files for India that is changing. They tell me that that's about to go to 400 locations within India. New data has become available in the last several years, and they're being able to do that. So if you do energy simulation, that is an opportunity for that. So there's that. So with that, I'll say thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you. That was Drew Crawley, Dr. Drew Crawley from New York City. It's about 8:15 a.m. for him. Thank you for being here with us today. There are only two very basic questions for you, Drew. One is, what mobile app was used to generate the model that you were presenting?
Okay. That was actually one from my company. Okay. It's called Context Capture.
Okay, Context Capture. There you are.
Yes.
Okay. Second one is it a Google map where we saw the augmented reality? It's a badly composed sentence. That's what it says in the Q&A box if you want to look at it. Does it make sense? Or have you used any other software? That's the question.
It was not Google Map. This was constructed from a combination of photogrammetry and other elements. And just because of the geometry that's known in the photograph, where the camera was and where, in particular, where it was looking, they're able to construct the geometry very accurately, including the ground.
Right. Okay. Well, we don't have any other questions that have come in from people. Dr. Rajinder Singh, since you inhabit the same space and you have been, sharing such knowledge and insights among students and would-be HVAC professionals and so on. What is your take on what Dr. Crawley presented today? You have to unmute, please. Yes.
The presentation was very good, and it is very knowledgeable, and it will boost the knowledge of our students. And the final year students, they have to go to the industry, and they can apply the knowledge of our respective DL and practically implement this knowledge in the industry. And the software used by our DL, that also be very useful.
Yeah.
People can use software also.
Yeah. Back to you, Drew Crawley. I have a very simple question. You presented to us Philadelphia. We are talking of what, 1.5 million people there, about 350 square kilometers.
Something like
Bangalore, the city that I come from today, is 12 million people. Okay,
Yes.
and we are about twice the size of Philadelphia, right? About 700 odd square kilometers. The other example you took of Helsinki, 600,000 people,
Yes.
200 square kilometers of a city, completely inefficient if you ask me, density per square kilometer, right?
It is actually a very distributed city.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm sure that people spend great deal of money on gas, on simply commuting in cars, because the city being as wide, as spread as it is, with just that kind of a population of 500,000, will definitely mean that there is no sensible, effective public transport. You might have it in the first 1 square mile.
The city of Helsinki is quite good on their public transport. They have electric surface trolleys that run through the city.
Okay.
And the Finns are quite energy conscious. It's very expensive for them. So most of them do, because there's not much parking in the city center. Even though it is built up, there's not that much room really to put cars. So you don't see a lot of cars on the street, partly because they do have the transport. They do have trains, very efficient. Last time I was in Helsinki, it was easier to take the train from the airport than it was any other way.
It's possible. It's possible. If I were to look at, Gurmeet Singh lives in a city called Mumbai. Mumbai, of course, you've been here.
Yeah.
And, if I were to take a small suburb, it'll already be 1 million people. We are talking 20 million there. It's a meta city, not just a mega city, So the challenge is, how do you see it? We can't take parallels from other European cities or even American cities, if you ask me, because the challenge here is that there is about only one country and region, China, which is comparable to anything that we have as a problem. Whether it's water, you talked about interconnectedness, water, energy, waste, air management, transportations, and such things. Tell me, how do you look at India and the next 10 years? How do you make these things livable? Forget about anything else. How do we make an Ahmedabad, for example, livable?
I think it is a challenge because India is growing so fast. The cities are already quite large, and Ahmedabad being on the smaller side. I think it comes down to starting with small, starting with a community, with a neighborhood, being able to look at the issues there, and then growing that out, trying to solve the transportation issues. I see that because when I started coming to India, there were really no subways around, but now many of those are in place. But probably they were planned at a time when they didn't think traffic was going to be any, or number of people using them was going to be anything like it is. And I think tackling those large people moving challenges first is going to be the real challenge. How do I connect those communities of 1 million to where they need to get every day? How for their services, for their jobs? And that, I think that transportation infrastructure is really first for dealing with those issues.
Would you then say, if you started by saying that, well, you have to, when we have a problem as formidable as we have in this country, in urban India, would you say that we need to start with a neighborhood or even better, one apartment, that example that you took of a 200,000 square meter or say 2 million square feet apartment block. And well, that's about 8,000 people who are going to live there, if I were to take a general average.
Right.
If we have, therefore, such microcosmic blocks and then the neighborhood and beyond, which handle water and energy on their own, there will
Yes.
only be transportation which has to work at the connectedness level. While
Yes.
we take this whole business of centralizing water should be taken out of the equation in urban development in the next 15 years in India. Would you agree with me on that?
I think water's a big issue. I don't
Water,
know.
energy, and waste.
Energy,
all three.
yeah,
All three.
I've experienced that when I was in Delhi my first time, rolling brownouts in the afternoon.
So would your answer be that we localize solutions here and not go the way Europe and the US did on centralizing infrastructure?
I think that there is a lot of opportunity for doing localized infrastructure, but interconnected with the larger infrastructure, so that if one system goes down, they might be able to draw on neighbors rather than.
Yeah, but then you know how it is with urban planning. The moment we give them that option of, being a little ambiguous,
Yes.
you know what governments will do? They'll say, okay, we don't need local solutions. Let's go with the brutality of public expenditure and therefore spend millions of dollars on central infrastructure, which in any case will fail, because for 50 years, 60, 70 years, we have seen that failing. So what would be as an affirmative, a definitive answer from you? Should we go localized solutions on energy, water, waste, or should we go central?
I won't talk to water and waste because that's not my expertise, but
Fair enough.
from an energy standpoint, I think very much local makes sense.
Right.
We have
Good.
have the resource, we have the solar. The issue is getting storage and getting
Okay.
batteries to a cost and an efficiency that we could use at a local level.
Got it. Wonderful. I think we are
And I think
right on time.
we're beginning to see that, where battery storage is becoming cost effective in the US.
Right,
So
right. Absolutely. Well, that's another story.
yes.
Gurmeet, you have anything to add at this point in
Yeah,
time?
for wastewater, see what's happening is most of our cities are mushrooming. Like if you look at Delhi, you go into Gurgaon on one side, Noida on the other side, and Ghaziabad and Greater Noida. So Delhi is connecting to Jaipur very fast. So you need what we call DWATS, decentralized water treatment solutions, because you cannot have centralized water treatment where you pump water so far away, you pump sewage so far away, and then you treat it, and then again you pump it into the water system or whatever. So it's better to have decentralized smaller systems where you avoid cross-contamination. And easy to maintain also.
Yeah, and Gurmeet, you and Payal, and maybe Dr. Singh, Rajendra Singh also, I'm going to have you walk the talk by doing it in your own factory premises or probably a home if you're not living in an apartment. In the next few days, I'm going to come back on this, and you're going to give me a rain check on this.
Well, I have the Jal Shakti minister tomorrow, the water minister, union
Right.
minister as my chief guest.
Right.
And what we are proposing is that each city should be treated like Singapore.
Okay.
And can we come to a level where we treat all our wastewater and therefore we don't need to pollute, and we'll have excess water rather than the 17% and 4% anomaly.
Gurmeet, that's exactly what I was asking our Dr. Crawley also, and he said, "What is
Yeah.
not my domain?" My question to you, not just as a citizen, but as also the president of the IPA and all that, my question to you, Gurmeet, is this: forget about one Mumbai. Mumbai is, we are talking 350 crore liters a day.
Yeah.
Well, for Dr. Crawley, I will say that is 3.5 billion liters per day, right? Now,
Yeah,
my
yeah.
point to you is, if we are talking 350 crore, in Bangalore, I'm talking 200 crore liters, right? My whole thing to you is, why are we talking at the city level to the government fellows? The moment you say that, now you're giving them an excuse for bringing up those public expenditure kind of, those massive budgets that they will bring, and who will make money on it. I'm saying the laws, the 4 laws that we all have, Mumbai doesn't have it. You must see how you can drive that there, which is for aerators, the 4, rainwater harvest, for STPs and such. If you make that happen, half your water demand goes away. 1/2 of your demand goes away. For every 1 billion liter or 1,000 crore liters, sorry, for 10 billion liters, we have 270 million units of carbon or of energy that is being spent.
Yeah.
So how do I lower GHG emissions? Water is not about water, Gurmeet. You know that better than I do, or as well as I do. Water is about energy. So we are, for every 10 billion liters, which is only 3 days in Bombay or 5 days in my city, we have got 250,000 kg of carbon that is saved. 270,000 kgs, right? So how do we work on this, Gurmeet? Without the government saying, I will take each city and, oh, the moment you say that, please don't say that to the Jal Shakti guys. You will give them more Shakti to do centralized infrastructure.
See, we have to mandate certain things like low flow fixtures, dual flushing systems or low flow sanitary ware, clothes and dishwashers which are low flow.
That's all.
And
Only
we
four.
have to make it like the Bureau of Energy Efficiency. You know what, the BE did a wonderful job where they made it tougher and tougher for the air conditioning. For example, the air conditioner or transformer, and every year they would change the benchmark. Okay, like Bharat Stage 4 for your vehicles, and now we are going to CNG and we are going to electric vehicles. So this has to be mandated from the center. It cannot, because otherwise the problem is you have 29 states and union territories, and they all have separate laws.
Agreed.
And this will never work, you know, because there's I'm sorry to use, I don't want to use the word, but there is a lot of other forces which come into place.
I agree.
Yeah. So, but if we mandate water metering, if we mandate 100% treatment of wastewater, if we mandate rainwater harvesting, and the fourth pillar of net zero, as I told you, is education and awareness. Very important, because the consumer, see, Dr. Crawley's city uses 580 liters per head per day, per capita per day. And here we are talking of 130 liters per capita per day or 200 liters per capita per day. Now, are we going towards the American consumption patterns? Do you know? I do not know whether you know, but in US, when Toyota sells an Innova, like an Innova car, even the hole to keep the glass is bigger.
Yep.
Because
That's right.
in US, they want a big hamburger, maybe double hamburger, and milkshake is so big. So the consumption patterns are completely different.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we
And
have to, we should in fact not duplicate those consumption patterns. We need to see how we can lower and mandate this centrally. We can't do it through state governments.
Fair.
It's not a city approach. It has to be an integrated urban management India approach.
Yeah, absolutely. It has to be very unique to India and to our, demands and whatever. Thank you so much. It's 6:05. We've spent a wonderful 90 minutes plus. Payal Jain, I think you should take over. Yes.
Well, for David, it's 7:30 in the morning, I think.
I know it's plus now. It must be about 8:30.
For
8:35
Dr. Drew
probably.
Crawley. Yeah.
8:30 now.
8:30. That's right. Payal Jain, over to you for some not concluding remarks, but I'll say some reflections that you think all these wonderful people, they've all stayed completely. Not only 5-6 people left just now. Over to you, Payal.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you very much. I wanted to thank Dr. Crawley very much. It was a fabulous presentation. Sorry, I can't switch on my video. I will drop off if I switch on the video. The network is very poor here. Thank you, Gurmeet. As always, the Pani was most inspiring. I know some people didn't understand Hindi, but we were very inspired all the same. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think it was a fabulous session, Doctor. I'm really, really very intrigued. I've learned a lot.
Actually,
big thank you.
I think we would all love to hear Dr. Rajinder Singh speak a little more, but I think he chose to speak less because he wanted more time from Dr. Crawley.
Yeah, Dr. Rajinder Singh always likes to stay in the background. He does a lot of work, but very quietly. Thank you, Dr. Singh. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
There are some other distinguished people. I'm seeing Niranjan Khatri is here. And Gurmeet used some things, and I was reminded again about Niranjan Khatri. He's also been saying many of these things that we are talking about when it comes to water. Anyway, so...
Well, if you saw Niranjan's visiting card when he was in ITC, was made out of recycled paper. It had braille on it. It had braille for the blind, and it was so small. Okay? Absolutely. Not only saving on the recycled paper, but saving on the content also.
Sure. And Drew, I must say, I'm delighted that it's just one of those days that I spend half the day with Rajan, and then I spend an hour plus with you. I had a very delightful session with him on multiple things, lots of things that we know India needs. And so we will sort of haul you into the chat and conversation sometime soon. Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you all. Thank you all of you who are here. And we will look forward to having you here tomorrow for the 4th edition of the Prem Jain Memorial Trust's World Green Building Week celebration. Thank you and have a great evening.
Thank you. Thank you. All the best.
Thanks. Okay.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.